Hi guys, and welcome back to week 9 of Parkside Youth. We've nearly made it through a whole term of Parkside Youth Online, which is absolutely insane. We can't wait to have you guys back here, seeing you all. Man, we can't wait for that. But for today or tonight, tonight would be for you guys. Yep, tonight. We're going to be going to Jason, and Jason's going to be speaking to us tonight, and it's going to be really good. Really good, we know that. So stick around for that, and we'll see you in 10 minutes and 14 seconds. Goodbye.
Hey guys, it's great to be joining with you here for another week of Parkside Youth Online. And hey, I was doing some research the other day, and did you know that approximately 160,000 Australians die every single year? That is the totality of our death rate. That includes everyone that dies of natural causes, people who might die of murders or natural disasters, everything. We lose about 160,000 people every year. But globally, annually, we lose somewhere between 50 to 60 million people every single year die. 50 to 60 million. Now, depending on the numbers, that equates to about one person every second. So actually, we lose like more than a person every single second. It's incredible when you think about it. But the question I want to ask you today is, of these 50 to 60 million people that we lose every single year to death, are you expecting any of them to come back? Are you expecting any of them to return from the dead? And the answer to that question is, of course not. You are not expecting any of those people who die, any of those 50 to 60 million people who die every single year. You're not expecting any of them to come back. You're expecting them to stay dead. Over the course of this series, we have been looking at Jesus the GOAT, Jesus the greatest of all time. We've been looking through the Gospel of John, which is a biography about the life of Jesus, and we've been talking about the dramatic claims Jesus makes about himself and the way he goes about backing it up. Today we're going to talk about the most dramatic claim Jesus made about himself and the most dramatic way in which he backed it up. Now, the fact is that Jesus, when he was alive, he was one of those statistics. He was one of the millions that die every single year on this planet. He was crucified, he died, he was executed, he was dead, and he was buried, he was put in a tomb for 3 days. He was one of those statistics. But the most dramatic claim that Jesus made, and the most dramatic way he backed it up, happened when he became one of those statistics, when he died. Shortly before Jesus passed away, he went to a village nearby to Jerusalem and visited one of his good friends. His name was Lazarus. Now, Lazarus had sadly passed away. Jesus came to this village and Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. Now, it isn't like today where, sometimes if you go to a hospital and somebody passes away, for a few minutes after they're dead, the doctors are not sure whether or not they can revive the person or not. No, Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. He had been dead for a long time. Your body cannot go more than, under 10 minutes less than 10 minutes after not having any oxygen. You're definitely gone. You're definitely brain dead. Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. He was definitely dead. And the family and the community were weeping. They were mourning. It's not like the current coronavirus situation where they could only have a few people attend a funeral. No, the whole community was there. Lazarus' sisters, Mary and Martha, were there. They were weeping and they were mourning. In the process of this weeping and mourning, Jesus made the most dramatic claim about himself. He said, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die." Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die." Now that's a pretty dramatic claim. You may never have heard this word resurrection before, but the word resurrection simply means life after death. It means to live even after you die, but not just any sort of life. No, a resurrected life means to actually be given a completely new body, a completely new and physical body. So what was Jesus saying? Jesus was saying, hey, I'm not going to be one of those statistics. I'm not going to be one of those people who die and never comes back. I won't be one of those statistics that we've just spoken about. That's what Jesus was saying. He was saying that I have the ability to restore life even after someone dies. I have the ability to heal and bring people back from the dead. And the way that Jesus backed it up was through the fact that he brought himself back from the dead. He was resurrected. Now, In the current world, and this has always been the case, that different cultures and different religions have different beliefs about what happens when you die. Now, obviously, there are some people who don't believe anything happens after you die. They believe you die, you stay dead. There are some cultures which believe in reincarnation, which means, when you die, you get transferred, your soul gets transferred into another body. But in what we teach, in Christianity, we believe in what is known as resurrection. Now, as we've been talking about right throughout this series, anybody can make any claim they want. Any religious system can make any claim it wants about what happens after you die. You have to be able to back it up, because if you can't back it up, then what you're saying, it just amounts to empty words. I can claim anything about myself. Unless I can back it up, it doesn't mean it's true. And what I want to say to you today is that the reason why we stand here proudly every single week and we proclaim that Jesus is the greatest of all time is because, unlike any other religious system, Jesus is the only one who, when he made a claim, he actually backed it up. When he made the claim that he could restore life after death, he actually backed it up. Now, resurrection, I want you to understand it like this. Everything in the world around us spoils. Sometimes you go to a shop and you hear about food that's perishable. The word perishable just means that it's going to expire. It's not going to go on forever. Everything in this world is perishable. Everything in this world spoils. From our bodies. Our bodies are not going to go on forever. We're going to spoil at some point, and we call that death or the process of dying, the process in which our cells decay. Food that you buy at the shops, it spoils. It has an expiry date. Plants, animals, everything around us has an expiry date. It's going to spoil. Even our universe, even the sun isn't going to go on forever. Eventually it's going to run out of usable energy. Eventually our universe is going to run out of usable energy. And this is what the word resurrection really means. It's the ability that Jesus had to take his life, something that should spoil, and actually restore it. Restore it to the point where it will never again. It'll be perfect. It'll be complete. It won't be subject to decay. It won't be subject to disease or any of the things that we struggle with today. And the hope of Christianity is centered around this resurrection idea, the idea that Jesus came back from the dead. If Jesus did not come back from the dead like he said, we would not be here sharing with you. We would not be doing youth group. There wouldn't be no Parkside Church. There'd be no Parkside Youth group. And what Jesus was saying is that I will be resurrected from the dead. When I die, when I'm crucified on that cross, 3 days later, I'm going to come back from the dead. I'm going to come back in a way that will never again spoil, a body that will never again perish. And what Jesus says to each and every one of us, and this is the heart of his dramatic claim, is that if you believe in me, you will live even though you die. You too will be given a resurrected body. You too will forever, for all eternity, spend reunited with God. And I think that gives us great hope. If you have ever lost anybody in your life, or one day you will lose people in your life, you'll lose grandparents, parents, brothers, sisters, and you may be at a stage of your life where you haven't really thought about that sort of stuff. But this gives you great hope. It gives you great hope to know that every person who puts their trust in Jesus, who believes that Jesus has the power to raise people from the dead, just like he raised himself, are going to spend eternity together, celebrating in peace and harmony with God. Think about the current climax of what we're going through with the Black Lives Matters movement. We can all see that the world is broken, that there is discrimination between people. But what is Jesus saying is, when we are all resurrected, those who believe in me will be living in perfect harmony. There'll be no need for protests or anything like that. There'll be no need for mental health awareness campaigns or anything like that, because you will all have perfect resurrected bodies. That is a great hope. But like I said, Jesus didn't just make this dramatic claim. He actually backed it up. And the two ways he backs it up in the context of John's gospel is, one, he raises Lazarus from the dead. Lazarus has been dead for 4 days, and Jesus says to him, Lazarus, come out of that grave. And Lazarus comes out, and there is a cloud of witnesses. The whole community, including Lazarus' own brothers and Lazarus' own family and Jesus' followers, witness Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. But more importantly, the way that Jesus backs up this dramatic claim, the way that you and I can know that what Jesus says is true, is because Jesus himself, 3 days after he died, he came back to life again. He was resurrected. He came back to life again. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably thinking, Jason, this is a great thing you're saying. I mean, the ability for Jesus to come back from the dead. But the question you're probably asking is, how do I know that it's true? How do I know that this event actually happened in history? How do I know that if I took my smartphone and I was standing outside that tomb, that Jesus actually walked out? How do I know that they're not just making up this great story? And fairy tales, they're around the place. Disney Plus a few months ago released their new app or their video streaming software. So you're saying, how do we know that this is not something that belongs on Disney Plus? It's not like a movie or something that they made up. Well, I want to say to you, the only way you can actually know is if Jesus appeared to people. If Jesus appeared to people and said, hey guys, you saw me dead 3 days ago, now I'm alive. And the great thing about the Bible is Christianity does not just give you things to believe, it gives you a reason why you should believe them. Jesus wasn't just resurrected, he actually appeared to people after that. One of the people that he appeared to was a man by the name of Paul. And Paul wrote this: what I received, I passed on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day according to the Scriptures. After that, he appeared to Peter, so one of Jesus' main followers, a guy by the name of Peter, and then he appeared to the 12, so that was Jesus' wider group of followers. After that, he appeared to more than 500 of the brothers and sisters at the same time. This is what Christianity rests on, the fact that Jesus, when he was raised from the dead, he appeared to hundreds of people and said, you want evidence that I'm alive? This is the evidence that you're going to get. I've actually physically appeared to people. And I want to say that when I first heard about this blew me away. Because when I was in high school growing up, I wanted evidence for what I believed. I wanted to know the legitimacy of truth. So I went on a journey that lasted many years investigating the historical evidence for Jesus' resurrection. And I came to the conclusion that any person that can be dead one day and 3 days later physically appear to people to prove that he's alive again cannot be making it up. Now, I don't have time, of course, in this video to go through a detailed list of that historical evidence, but the fact is that if you will dedicate the time to looking at that evidence, you will see it for yourself. When I studied extension history in high school and then even beyond, as I started to look at history as my field of study, I realized that the evidence for Jesus' resurrection is incredible. There is no question amongst historians that Jesus was crucified that a person named Jesus existed and that he was crucified under the orders of Pontius Pilate, as the Bible says. And there are many, many historians out there, even his people who are not Christians, who turn around and say that the evidence for the resurrection is one of the most interesting things that people have to look at. Because if it is true, then it changes everything we know about the world around us. For you sitting in front of your computer screen watching this, if the resurrection of Jesus is true, then that changes the way you understand the world. That will dramatically alter the world, because it means that Jesus is who he says he is, it means that Jesus is God, and it means that we have an opportunity to be fully reconciled together with God. So I want to challenge you here today to actually step back and say, you know what? This resurrection of Jesus is bigger than anything I know. It's bigger than Netflix, it's bigger than YouTube, it's bigger than my family, it's bigger than my friends. Because this is the way that I can have a personal relationship with a God who created everything, and with a God who wants to reunite with me one day. Now, I don't just want to say here today that you should just blindly believe what I'm saying. I want to challenge you to actually go away and research and study things for yourself. Now, you might be thinking, oh yeah, but isn't somebody coming back from the dead unscientific? Well, not really. Science is actually based on an analysis of the available facts and the available data. Now, if you have available evidence of Jesus appearing to people today, then a scientific mindset should actually challenge you to say, okay, well, I'm going to have to challenge my existing beliefs about miracles and things like that. Jesus, when he rose from the dead, he didn't suspend the laws of death. People still die, and people are still dying today. But what Jesus did was he became the first person to actually defeat death. And he gave us a dramatic promise that every single person who puts a trust in him will have the same chance in life. They will live even though they die. And can I just close on this story? I mentioned before that Jesus didn't just appear to people after he died. He's still actually appearing to people today. If you were to jump on YouTube and research some testimonies of people, there are plenty of people today who didn't know anything about God, who didn't know anything about Christianity, who didn't know anything about Jesus, who Jesus actually miraculously appeared to. He physically appeared to them, just like he did to his disciples after his death on the cross. One of these guys is a man from the country Liberia. Liberia is an African country, and I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it, but Liberia has a very sad history and a very sad reputation. Liberia is one of the poorest countries, the most poorest countries in the world. Disease and famine run rampant in this country, and for a long time Liberia was in the middle of a civil war. Now, if you're not sure, a civil war is just a war within a country. So countries have wars with each other, but a civil war is when they internally have wars and political threats. Now, Liberia went through a very, very serious war for many, many years, a very, very serious civil war. There was political upheaval and everything, more dramatic than some of the images you see online today. And Liberia has a country where many, many women, it's got probably the country with the highest rate of domestic violence and abuse there. And Liberia, when it went through this civil war, what happened was there were many generals, what we call warlords, who were all fighting for power. And one of these guys, one of these warlords, his name was Joshua. And he had a very interesting general name. You see, his followers and his rivals gave him a very bizarre nickname. The nickname they gave Joshua was General Butt Naked. General Butt Naked. And the reason for that was because Joshua, when he would lead his troops into battle, he would actually try intimidating the opposition. And the way that he would intimidate the opposition was he would actually take off all his clothes and he would command his men to do the same thing, and they would run into battle literally with no clothes on. But Joshua was responsible for the deaths of thousands of men and women during this civil war. And Joshua wasn't just any commander. He was actually also a priest. He was like one of those witch doctor type priests in African culture. And Joshua would actually take a child before the battle, and he would actually kill a child and then give the blood to his men to actually drink in order to charge them up before battle. I know it's freakish, but imagine this man. This man is so far away from God. He's doing some of the most violent, inhumane things to people, killing thousands of people, killing little children and drinking their blood, engaging in cannibalism. And one day, Joshua, having slaughtered a child, drunk the blood, went into battle and then was washing his hands. And all of a sudden, he heard a voice behind him. Joshua turns around, this evil, sick man turns around, and he says, I saw a man glowing, bright white, glowing more radiant than the sun. And this man was Jesus, he said. And Jesus spoke to him and said, why are you living like a slave? Why are you living like a slave? And Joshua was like, what are you talking about? I'm a king. Look at me. I'm killing thousands of people. I'm a king to these people. And Jesus said, you are living your life like a slave. Repent and live, or continue in the life that you're living and die. And it was that moment that Joshua, a man who never knew who Jesus was, saw the risen, resurrected Jesus, physically saw him. And that began Joshua to go on an incredible journey in which eventually he received Jesus, knowing full well that Jesus had died for all of his sins, and physically he was alive, physically he was resurrected, he was raised from the dead. And several years after the civil war in Liberia ended, the UN went in there and they were hunting down the people that were guilty of committing these terrible war crimes. And Joshua was one of these people that they brought forward. The problem was now Joshua had actually, since Jesus appeared to him, Joshua had incredibly turned his life around. 360 degrees he had turned his life around. Now Joshua had set up an organization, a home, and he was going around places bringing in all of these former military, all of these former guerrilla leaders, all of these former fighters, and he was telling them about the wonderful power of Jesus, the risen Jesus who appeared to him. And he was saving, and these people's lives were being transformed. They were getting out of their abusive, violent past. They were getting out of drug addiction, and they were receiving Jesus, and they were going on to make Liberia a better place. Joshua stood in the courtroom, and he was being interviewed by the UN judges, the UN appointed judges. And he was admitting to all of the atrocities he had committed. And he basically said that when they asked him how many people, and this is on video, you can go on YouTube and you can see his interview with the judges. And he basically said, I'm responsible for thousands, maybe 20,000 people died because of me. And Joshua was one of the few people, because of the work that he was doing, he was one of the few people that the UN actually pardoned for his crimes. He's one of the few people. And the reason why I tell you this story is to illustrate to you that God has the ability to pardon us of all of the bad things that we've done in life. Okay, none of us are as evil, I'm sure, as Joshua was, but God has the ability to pardon every single one of us for all the bad things that we've done in life. And like he appeared to Joshua to demonstrate that he was physically alive, Jesus appeared to his disciples. If that is not powerful evidence, then nothing we can present to you will be. I challenge you here today, as we go on to our Zoom conversation, to think about this truth. Jesus is the greatest of all time, and he backed it up by being raised from the dead. Is that what you believe?
Look, thank you so much, Jason, for that message. It was really, 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 really good. Week 9 is now done and dusted. We go on to week 10 next week, but next week's going to be a bit different.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, I noticed that.
What?
Wait, what?
What?
Were you trying to say something?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you...
About week 10. Isn't that what I'm doing?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I stuffed up. Okay.
What did you stuff up?
I thought you were talking about when I was pulling the mic down, and you're like, yeah, and I went to stop, and it was just, it doesn't matter. It's
No, anyway, I've got the mic. Oh, look, the person with the mic speaks. All right. In our Zoom meeting, make sure you get details about pizza, because next week, week 10, the last week of term, we are planning to give you all pizza and have a feast together, but online, but together with pizza for free delivered to you. So pay attention in the Zoom chat. If we don't mention it, remind us, but we will mention it. Pizza.
The person with the mic speaks. I have spoken. Thank you for joining us, guys, and we'll see you in Zoom. Remember, next week there is going to be no YouTube video. That's what I was trying to say before you stole my limelight. There'll be no YouTube video. We're going to go straight into the Zoom meeting. So we'll start that at 6:45. 6:45, we'll start that. That's going to be a good one. It's going to be different. Stay tuned. Can't wait to see you all.
Why is it different?
Because we're going to be having Maddie, and Maddie is going to be giving her testimony to us over Zoom. So that's going to be really cool. So we'll see you then, and just remember, the person with the mic speaks, and we're going to end it here because I'm the last person on the mic that spoke.